Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today we're setting up my April bullet journal, and this month's theme is inspired by the world of The Lord of the Rings, entering its beautiful and whimsical aesthetic. So join me for second breakfast and let's get started. For the cover page, I created this elvish archway surrounded by flowing vines and leaves. I wanted it to feel like you're looking through a window into another world, like something hidden deep in a forest. I really wanted something that felt comforting, a little whimsical, and just slightly ethereal, and hopefully make Legolas proud. So this month is also a little different for me because I decided to push myself, not just with the theme, which is already pretty ambitious thanks to Tolkien's vast world building, but with my materials too. If you haven't noticed yet, I'm not using my Ohuhus today or my Tombow brush pens. I'm trying out these acrylic markers from Enmi for the first time, and honestly, I had no idea what I was doing at first. So the setup is very much a learn as I go moment, which felt kind of perfect for the theme, like going on a little creative journey. As I'm using these new markers, I see that the lines are a lot more organic than what I usually do. It's very flowy, slightly imperfect, and kind of growing in different directions. And this is where I really started learning how these acrylic markers behave. At first, I noticed three things. One, they're way more opaque than what I'm used to, very similar to painting, which is something I do very little of. Two, layering works so much more differently, and I'll explain later about that. And three, you have to be a little more intentional with the strokes. So what you're watching now is essentially me experimenting with these new markers as I'm creating my bullet journal setup. No practice, just raw dogging it. If you're wondering, I bought these markers after deciding to base my month on Tolkien's world. I've been on a deep rabbit hole of watching artists color with these markers, and the one thing that caught my eye about them is that you can go from darker to lighter, which was actually so insane to me. I've been so used to my Ohuhu alcohol markers, where one of the basic principles is that you have to start off with a light base and build darker and darker tones from there. But that meant that I couldn't add layers of highlights on darker colors if I wanted to. So these acrylic markers basically changed the game for me because I can now go from dark to light layers and add as many highlights as I want to. So here you're seeing me really enjoy and explore the lighter and lighter layers I'm adding to my elvish arch, and it fills me with such ease knowing I can make something feel so vibrant with color with these markers. And I also like to mention, in case I haven't, that this is not sponsored at all by anything I'm using here. I'm just a girl exploring her artistic capabilities and broadening her skill. While I was using these markers, I did truly believe that they helped me achieve the overall aesthetic I was trying to go for that I think I would have struggled to get from Ohuhu markers. However, to play my own devil's advocate, I'm still getting in the hang of blending these acrylic markers together. This is something that typically comes so easily with Ohuhus. I'm kind of doing a bit of trial and error right around here, where I'm trying to blend the colors with my finger, and it's kind of working but not really. I kind of got into a splotchy kind of method, and it's honestly helping create that ethereal sunshine effect, so I'm just gonna roll with it. So here is where you can see that I am clearly struggling with the blending of these dang markers. Since I wanted to try out these markers to see if I like them, I only bought the 30 pack. So I basically just have 30 colors to work with, which shouldn't be an excuse if I wanted to call myself an artist, I know. What I'm trying to say is that I used all my green colors on the archway, so I went with this gray marker and attempted to mix the dark green and gray together, and it obviously did not work the way I wanted to. So after like 20 minutes of struggling to make this background happen, I gave up and went with what I knew, which was Ohuhu markers. This was where the fun part was for me. This was where the reason I wanted to try acrylic markers out for this theme. I see so many beautiful works of art of scenes of nature, and I really wanted to try to recreate it. So from what I've learned after hours of watching reels and TikToks to prepare, it's a lot of layering and using this stippling method to create the effect of leaves and greenery. And I do the same method with lighter and lighter colors, making sure to allow the darker layers below to still show through and help create that depth effect. And in case you missed it, I taped over the letters of my April title so I can freely paint over it and worry about removing the taped layers later. My favorite part of using these markers is that I can see the vision right away. As soon as I finish like 1 or 2 layers, I already see my vision starting to come to life, and it feels so rewarding. I really feel safe using these markers because if I feel my vision coming to fruition this fast, then I get to just enjoy creating art the rest of the way and not have to worry about making it perfect. I am so obsessed with how the leafage is turning out that I'm not even gonna look at that mess of a background. And I advise that you don't either. Normally, I would be stressed out right about now for that awful background, but because of these acrylic markers, I can just easily paint over it and it's not that big of a deal, which is such a blessing having to not worry about messing something up. With Ohuhu markers, you have to be pretty intentional with everything you do since you're working from light to darker colors, so you'll see almost everything. Not with these babies, so really, I'm just trying to have the time of my life right now. Here I'm creating some flowers and foliage for the foreground using the same layering and stippling method again, while also adding some cobblestone steps to add to that area and just honestly fill out the space a bit more. I'm adding some pink flowers to add just a touch of warmth in there, just to ease back the greenery. I wanted to attempt to create some sun rays coming through the elvish arch, but decided against it and to just stop while I'm ahead. Maybe in another 6 or so months, but definitely not now. If it isn't obvious yet, as soon as these markers got delivered, I got right into the cover for the theme. No practice or anything, partly because of time crunch, but also because I believe you learn the most from doing, and from this monthly cover alone, I learned so much about my abilities with these markers and what they serve for me. This part was so satisfying to me. It's now my favorite step when learning these markers. I honestly did not think it was going to come off that clean. I was just kind of hoping for the best but expecting the worst with this. But it surprisingly came out pretty good, and I think I prefer this method over just writing over everything with a white gel pen. For the quote page, I kept things pretty minimal to balance out the complete masterpiece I just created on the right side, not to toot my own horn or anything. In the center, I wrote out this quote in Elvish, "There is always hope." I figured it would be pretty fitting for this theme considering hope is what I was holding on to the entire time I was trying out these markers that I never used before on my bullet journal theme setup for the YouTube video. Writing in Elvish was pretty hard. I looked it up and tried to copy it to the best of my ability. The hard part was to keep the brushstrokes consistent with the reference. Since I'm not really an elf, sadly, I tried my best to kind of assume how the brush pen would act when writing this type of text. And also, I really hope I wrote out what I think it means and not pull one of those Chinese tattoos where it translates to nonsense like fried chicken or something. So if anyone out there can actually read Elvish text, please let me know I'm not writing anything ridiculous on my bullet journal right now. With my beautiful entrance to my April theme all finished, let's move on to the calendar. For my calendar spread, I wanted to create another little scene. Using these markers made me start to really love creating little windows of beautiful worlds that I just want to live in. Like I'm kind of manifesting my dream aesthetic, kind of. So I drew this stone archway leading up through a forest, kind of like it's guiding you somewhere unknown but peaceful. This part was definitely a challenge because with these acrylic markers, blending isn't as forgiving as alcohol markers, as I've said before. So instead of blending traditionally, I focused more on layering colors, building depth through shapes and more layering, and letting the texture do a lot of the heavy lifting. I also leaned into brighter greens and deeper blues here to help create that contrast between light and shadow, like sunlight filtering through trees. And honestly, this was one of those moments where I just had to trust the process. It definitely looked a little chaotic halfway through, but once everything came together, it started to feel really alive. Here, I'm going to be using the same layering and stippling method again. I feel that these markers are perfect for scenic compositions like this one because it's a lot of repetition methods in coloring, and that's honestly one of my favorite ways to create art because it really just lets me turn my mind off and just do what I know. And in the end, I get this really beautiful work of art. I'm really happy with adding the deep blue in there. If I'm being honest, the reason I added it was because I was limited in my choices for green, so I needed to go darker than my darkest green somehow. And I just chose to go with the color that comes after green in the rainbow. Is this color theory, guys? Am I somehow implementing color theory? Or am I just speaking out of my butt and I actually just have no idea what I'm talking about? Either way, it looks good in my eyes, and I guess that's all that matters. But what I'm trying to say is that I'm kind of thankful for having a limited color palette because it forces me to go out of my comfort zone and use colors together that I normally never would. So I'm really grateful that it pushed and challenged me in that way. With that being said, and with how much I'm really loving these markers, I'm most likely gonna get the 80 pack by the end of the month if I'm being completely honest and self-aware with myself. For the actual calendar, I went with a basic grid format, nothing too extravagant in design because I wanted the attention to be on the stairway art and have that really be the eye catcher of the layout. And because I'm not using a month at a glance layout this month, I made sure to make my boxes big enough to write important dates and events in. I chose to go with this deep blue marker to kind of give a nod back to the deep blue of the forest to keep everything looking cohesive. Afterwards, I'll start on the April title letters, which are going to lean more into the forest greens. For the title, I tried, guys. I really tried to be out there with the font choice this month and not lean back into my typical choices of subtle and thin serif fonts. I wanted the title to feel as whimsical and organic as the rest of the theme. So I went with a fancier kind of serif that's more bold than usual, while adding some details and textures that give a nod back to the mystical forest. I'm so happy I actually went with this kind of font aesthetic because it really complements the art style of the theme perfectly without it being too much. I feared that had I went with the usual font style that I typically go for, it wouldn't have been able to complete the full vision of a Lord of the Rings theme. So I'm pretty happy with the font style choice. You'll see here that I'm adding some leaf detailing to the letters to kind of give it the feeling that the forest is growing around the letters and really helps encapsulate the feeling of being in a deep forest. With the calendar all complete, we can now move on to the last spread of the month, which are the trackers. I'm gonna be honest, I was kind of stumped with how I wanted to do the trackers this month. Because the art style of this theme is so bold and intricate on its own, I really had trouble figuring out how to incorporate that with a day-to-day mood tracker. So I decided to give the spread a break from any complex world building and just draw some simple leaves and branches for the mood tracker. I feel like it can give this month a bit of a breather and just not be overly complicated. So we're doing lots of vines, leaves, and I'm also adding some small yellow flowers scattered throughout to add an extra pop of color and add back in a little warmth. I wanted the spread to feel a lot more relaxing to make compared to the calendar and cover, less pressure and more of just enjoying the process. This month's setup really reminded me that growth doesn't always feel smooth. Sometimes it looks like testing new tools, making mistakes, and adjusting as you go. And honestly, I think that's where a lot of the magic is. Trying something new, even when you're unsure, is what helps you evolve creatively. And I feel like this theme captured that really well, and I'm just really thankful for what it challenged and pushed out of me. For the habits this month, I'm keeping it practical and functional, using the shape of the month as my outlook so that I can just fill in each day I complete the task throughout the month. I'm tracking my typical habits: gym, skincare, journaling, posting, and no spending. Emphasis on the no spending. Not really for like essentials like rent or gas or anything like that, but more for unnecessary purchases. For example, I've been on a really big Candy Crush kick lately, and it's been thinning out my wallet really bad, so I really need to get that under control this month. I accidentally added more leaves than the actual number of days of the month, so I'm just filling those in so it doesn't confuse me in the future. If you made it this far, thank you so much for watching. I'm honestly pretty impressed with myself that I was able to achieve this from markers that I pretty much learned on the go. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe, and you can follow me for more on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and Pinterest. Until then, I'll see you in the next one.